My name is Sienna Calloway. I'm 23 years old. And the strangest part of this story is that the woman begging my mother to save her now once looked straight at her and decided she was the child the family could afford to lose. My grandmother is in a nursing home on the edge of town, crying into a landline that always sounds faintly wet, like the walls themselves have absorbed too many regrets. My mother is in the kitchen of the house my grandfather built, setting plates on a marble island under pendant lights she had rewired herself during the renovation. The woman who was thrown away now owns the keys to the only legacy my grandmother ever cared about protecting. That would sound like revenge if you didn't know how much it cost her to get here. My mother's name is Delilah Calloway. She's 51. She owns an architecture and restoration firm now. People in our city say her name with respect, sometimes even a little caution, the way people do when someone has earned everything the hard way and never once asked for permission to stand where she stands. But before the firm, before the clients and awards and magazine photos, she was just a young woman with a baby on her hip and a face that had not yet learned how to stay still while her heart was breaking. The sister who broke it was named Sabrina. Sabrina was 2 years younger and beloved in the careless, dangerous way some daughters are beloved. My grandmother, Vivian, made it obvious early. Sabrina got softness. My mother got expectations. Sabrina got things handed to her with a smile. My mother got lectures about discipline, responsibility, sacrifice. Sabrina made messes and got rescued. My mother cleaned them up and got told that was what strong women do. By the time my mother was old enough to understand the pattern, it had already settled into the walls of the house like old smoke. Sabrina got a car at 16. My mother got rides when someone remembered. Sabrina's college was an investment. My mother's loans were character building. Sabrina got the bright front bedroom with the bay window and morning light. My mother got the converted den at the back of the house, the one that stayed cold in winter and held heat in summer like punishment. My grandfather Harold tried to soften some of it while he was alive. From everything my mother told me, he was steady, practical, quiet in the way that makes a person feel safe. He built things with his hands and meant what he said. When he died, the house stayed. The values didn't. Vivian inherited the property, the investments, the polished version of family history. And once Harold was gone, nobody was left to interrupt her favoritism. My mother married my father when she was 27. His name was Ethan Mercer. He was handsome in a way that photographs well and character doesn't. The wedding was small, simple, honest. My grandmother didn't come. She sent flowers and an excuse. Sabrina was moving that weekend, and apparently that mattered more than watching her older daughter promise her life to a man she still believed was worthy of it. A year later, I was born. And for 3 months, my mother tried to build the kind of home women build when they are exhausted and hopeful at the same time. Bottles drying on the rack, laundry in soft little piles, half-finished meals on the stove, a baby waking every few hours, a husband coming home late enough to be forgiven because she still wanted to believe work was the reason. What she didn't know was that betrayal had already moved into the house and made itself comfortable. My father had been sleeping with Sabrina for months. Not after I was born, before, during the pregnancy, while my mother was carrying me, while she was buying crib sheets and folding tiny clothes and thinking she was building a future, the two people closest to her were stepping around her trust like it was something too boring to respect. She told me once that the worst part wasn't the confession. It was the feeling that, looking back, the room had changed shape without her noticing. A paused conversation when she walked in. A phone turned face down. Sabrina suddenly visiting more often. Ethan being gentler when guilt made him generous, colder when guilt made him resentful. By the time the truth surfaced, it had already been living with them for months. My mother found out because she stopped ignoring the little things she'd been trained to excuse. She saw a message, then another, then enough to make denial feel humiliating. When she confronted him, he did what selfish people do when their lies are finally cornered. He sat down. He spoke carefully. He acted tired, as if her discovery had inconvenienced him more than the betrayal itself. At first he tried to soften it, then he tried to explain it. Then he admitted it. Yes, it was Sabrina. Yes, it had been going on for months. Yes, he loved her. That was the word he used, loved. My mother was standing in the kitchen holding one of my bottles when he said it. She told me she remembers staring at the milk line inside the plastic like it was the only stable thing in the room. What about me? She asked him. And he actually had the nerve to look sorry. Delilah, he said. You and I, we became routine. Routine. That was how he described the woman who had almost died, bringing his daughter into the world. Then came the part that split what was left of her heart. He told her Sabrina made him feel alive, said things between them were different, intense, easy. He said my mother had become distant during the pregnancy, tired, focused on the baby, as if motherhood had somehow been an insult to him. She told him to get out. Instead, he said Sabrina was pregnant too. That part turned the air in the room to glass. My mother looked at him and understood all at once that she was not dealing with a mistake, not weakness, not confusion. She was standing in the wreckage of a decision that had been made over and over again. She took me upstairs, packed a bag for herself, one for me, and then stopped halfway through zipping mine because she realized she was shaking so hard she could barely make her fingers work. Later, when she spoke about that night, she always said the body knows before the mind does. Her hands understood first that life had split in two. The next morning, she went to Vivian, not because she expected tenderness, because she still believed facts mattered. She still believed some betrayals were too grotesque to defend once spoken aloud. Vivian was in the kitchen of the big house, standing at the marble island Harold had installed himself. My mother sat across from her, pale from no sleep, still smelling faintly like baby formula and detergent. She told her everything. Ethan, Sabrina, the affair, the pregnancy, the months of deception, the fact that her own sister had been in her home, smiling at her while sleeping with her husband. Vivian listened quietly, too quietly. Then she said, Sabrina told me some of this last week. My mother just stared at her. Last week? She asked. Vivian folded her hands. I wanted to hear both sides before I reacted. Both sides of what? My mother said. There are not two sides to my sister sleeping with my husband. Vivian sighed the way people do when they are preparing to say something unforgivable in a calm voice. Delilah, you've been under strain for a long time. Ethan says you were distant. Sabrina says the two of them didn't plan this. My mother laughed then, not because it was funny, because rage sometimes has nowhere else to go. I was pregnant, she said. Then I had a newborn. I was exhausted, Vivian. I know, Vivian said, but loneliness does things to people. My mother leaned forward. So this is my fault. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Vivian's face tightened, but not with shame, with irritation. I'm saying that Sabrina is finally serious about someone. Ethan is different with her. Calmer. More grounded. Maybe this happened the wrong way, but maybe it was always going to happen. My mother told me that was the moment something permanent went cold inside her. Not when she learned about the affair. Not even when she heard about the other pregnancy. Here, at the Marble Island, listening to her own mother dress betrayal up as destiny because it was more convenient than condemning the daughter she loved most. What about me? My mother asked. What about your daughter sitting in front of you? Vivian's answer was soft, almost pitying. You've always been the strong one, Delilah. There it was. The family sentence. You can survive it, so I don't have to stop it. My mother stood up slowly. She said later that she wanted to scream, but screaming would have made Vivian feel like she was part of something dramatic and tragic. She didn't deserve that. She deserved to sit in her beautiful kitchen and hear how clearly she had just chosen one daughter over the other. So that's it, my mother said. You're choosing her. Vivian looked offended by the plainness of it. I'm trying not to lose either of my daughters. You already did. My mother walked out of the house and did not cry until she reached the car. She filed for divorce 3 days later. My father didn't fight it. Men like him only become passionate when secrecy is still protecting them. Once exposed, he moved toward ease. Sabrina moved in with him before the divorce was final. Vivian helped them furnish the place. I know that detail because someone always tells the discarded woman what the family does after they decide she's no longer central. The legal process moved quickly. My mother got full custody of me. My father agreed with barely a struggle, which still feels to me like one of the ugliest details in the whole story. People think abandonment always sounds violent. Sometimes it sounds like paperwork returned too fast. That year, Vivian hosted Thanksgiving. She invited Sabrina and Ethan. She did not invite Delilah. A cousin called to tell her because humiliation travels faster through families than sympathy ever does. My mother stood in our apartment kitchen, holding the phone so tightly her knuckles whitened, while the cousin explained it in a voice full of awkward kindness. Apparently, Vivian thought it would be easier, less tension, more peace. My mother thanked her for letting her know, hung up, and stood perfectly still for nearly a minute. Then she looked down at me in my high chair, banging a spoon against the tray like the world had never done anything cruel, and she said quietly, "Okay." That was the word she used. Not because she accepted it, because she understood the rules now. Her family had made its choice. Her husband had made his. Her sister had made hers. And from that moment on, every brick of the life she built would have to be placed without them. She called an attorney the next morning and started planning the rest of our lives, like grief was a room she would pass through later, once survival stopped requiring both hands. That was how it began. Not with one betrayal, with a chain of them. A husband who called her routine. A sister who wanted what was hers. A mother who mistook favoritism for love. And a baby too small to understand that the woman carrying her out of that fire had just realized she would have to become her own family from now on. For the first few years, survival looked ordinary from the outside. That was part of what made my mother's strength so easy for other people to underestimate. She did not rebuild with dramatic speeches or visible revenge. She rebuilt through repetition, through bills paid on time, through showing up to work with almost no sleep and still making herself useful enough that people trusted her with more than they gave anyone else, through learning how to be exhausted without becoming helpless. We lived in a one-bedroom apartment above a dry cleaner for most of my early childhood. The place always smelled faintly of starch and warm metal. In summer, the bedroom window unit rattled so hard at night, it sounded like it might throw itself out into the alley. In winter, my mother kept the heat lower than she wanted and wore socks to bed so she could keep saving. There was a folding table in the corner of the living room where she started taking on drafting and restoration work after hours. That table mattered more than any piece of furniture I can remember from those years. It was where she turned hurt into structure. She worked her day job until 6, picked me up, fed me, bathed me, read to me when she still had a voice left. Then, after I fell asleep, she went back to that folding table and worked until midnight, sometimes later. Measurements, plans, historic facades, permit notes, material estimates. Every line she drew seemed to say the same thing. I was left, but I am not finished. When I was 4, she got her license. When I was 5, she took her first independent client, a kitchen restoration for a retired couple who argued gently over cabinet colors and paid her in 2 checks because they didn't trust online transfers. She treated that project like it was a cathedral. I remember sitting on a drop cloth in the corner with crayons, while she spoke to contractors twice her age in a voice so calm and exact that even then I understood people listened differently when she used it. That client led to another, then another, a porch rebuild, a row house renovation, a historical consultation for a church office. Nothing glamorous at first, just enough, then slightly more than enough, then enough to breathe without checking the account balance every hour. She never asked Vivian for money. Never asked Ethan for child support, even though people told her she should. Never asked Sabrina for anything at all. She said once, while balancing invoices on that folding table, "I'd rather build a hard life with clean hands than a soft one with debts I can't stand looking at." I didn't fully understand it then, but I do now. Meanwhile, the other side of the family was still living as if consequences were something that only happened to other people. Vivian kept pouring money into Sabrina and Ethan because that was what she had always done for the people who pleased her most. There was always a reason, a setback, a plan, a short-term loan that was definitely temporary, an opportunity that just needed one more push. The names changed, but the pattern never did. Sabrina wanted a boutique wellness studio. Vivian helped with the lease. That failed. Then Ethan wanted to open a custom furniture showroom with reclaimed wood and imported fixtures, and a business model based mostly on optimism. Vivian helped fund that too. That failed faster. Then there was a consulting venture, then a resale idea, then a partnership opportunity. No serious adult should have touched without legal counsel and a fire extinguisher. Each one came wrapped in language that made recklessness sound visionary. Vivian believed all of it because belief was easier than admitting she had anchored her whole emotional life to the wrong child. When I was 9, I saw Sabrina in person for the first time that I can clearly remember. It was at a family event on my grandfather Harold's side, one of those gatherings people hold, because time has passed and someone still thinks blood automatically means reunion. I was old enough to notice posture, tone, the distance between bodies. Old enough to feel tension before I had the language for it. Sabrina arrived late in a cream coat that probably cost too much, with Ethan beside her and a little girl trailing them. My half-sister, technically. Her name was Chloe. She had my father's mouth and Sabrina's eyes, and a pink headband sliding down her hair every few minutes. She was innocent in the way children always are at the center of adult damage. I remember feeling sorry for her before I understood why. Ethan spotted my mother first. He walked toward her with that strained expression people wear when they want credit for being willing to make eye contact after ruining your life. "Delilah," he said. My mother turned, one hand resting lightly on my shoulder. He held out his hand. She looked at it, then at him. Then she said, "That seems ambitious." He flushed immediately. Sabrina came up behind him, already defensive. "We're just trying to be civil." My mother's face did not change. "No, you're trying to feel better." The room around us shifted without anyone speaking. A cousin looked down into her drink. Someone at the buffet table suddenly became very interested in deviled eggs. I stood there beside my mother and felt for the first time the power of a person refusing to help other people tidy up what they did to her. Ethan tried again. "It's been years." "Yes," my mother said, "and you are still the man who slept with my sister while I was pregnant." Sabrina's mouth tightened. "We have a daughter together." "And I have a memory," my mother said. "One of those facts matters more to me than the other." Then she turned and walked away with me before either of them could decide whether to act wounded or angry. That was my childhood in one scene. My mother declining to participate in the fantasy that time itself repairs what people never apologized for honestly. By the time I was 12, Vivian's finances had started to buckle. At first, it was whispered about. A refinanced line of credit, a property tax delay, then more concrete things surfaced. A car loan. Ethan stopped paying. Business debt, Sabrina claimed, would be covered soon. Credit cards Vivian had opened, just until they got back on their feet. It never ended because they were never trying to get back on their feet. They were trying to avoid standing on them at all. The house became collateral. That was the part my mother could not forgive, even from a distance. Harold's house, the one with the marble island, the original built-ins, the hand-carved mantel, the deep front porch with stone columns that made the whole place look anchored, even in bad weather. Vivian had inherited it whole. Then she began cutting it open in pieces to keep Sabrina and Ethan cushioned from the consequences of being exactly who they had always been. First one loan, then another, then a larger one to consolidate the earlier mistakes, which is what people call it when they want disaster to sound organized. By 14, I knew enough numbers to understand that something serious was happening. I heard fragments when my mother was on the phone with her attorney, a woman named Nora Bell, who spoke with the dry precision of someone allergic to chaos. Appraisals, liens, variable rates, missed payments, restructuring attempts. Every adult phrase translated into the same plain truth. Vivian was bleeding the house to keep feeding a lie. Then came the call. I remember exactly where my mother was standing when the phone rang. In the office she had finally rented, near the back window, one hand on a rolled set of plans. Her face changed the moment she heard Vivian's voice. Not softened, sharpened. She listened for a long time. Then she said, "How much?" Longer silence. Her mouth flattened. "No," she said finally. "Tell me the real number." She turned away from me then, but I could still hear enough. The debts tied to the house had climbed higher than anything a person on fixed income had any business carrying. Sabrina and Ethan's ventures had failed one after another. Vivian was behind. The bank was circling. And now, after years of choosing one daughter over the other with near religious consistency, she was calling the daughter she had discarded and asking for rescue. My mother came home later that evening quieter than usual, not upset in the obvious way, more contained. That was always when she was most dangerous emotionally, when pain had already hardened into decision. At dinner, she pushed pasta around her plate for a minute and then said, "Your grandmother called." I was old enough by then to understand the weight of that. What did she want? My mother gave a brief, humorless laugh. Money. How much? She named the number. Even at 14, I nearly dropped my fork. I said, "Because of Sabrina?" My mother looked at me across the table. "Because of years of Sabrina. That's different." Later that night, while I pretended to do homework at the kitchen counter, I heard her call Nora. "Can she save it?" Nora asked through the speaker, voice crackling faintly. "Not without someone paying for choices she made over and over again," my mother said. "Are you going to?" A long pause. Then my mother said very clearly, "No." There was no triumph in it, no pettiness, just the calm of a woman who had been cast as backup her entire life and finally refused the role. A few days later, Vivian called again. This time, my mother put it on speaker for a moment by accident before stepping into the other room, and I heard enough to last me years. Delilah, please, Vivian said. It's your father's house. That word hit the air hard enough to feel. Your father's house. Not mine, my mother might have said. Not yours when I needed protection. Not family when you excluded me. Only your father's house now. Because legacy is the last refuge of people who spent love carelessly. My mother's answer was quiet. Harold built that house for a family. You used it to finance the people who broke one. Vivian started crying then, and even from the kitchen, I could hear the panic underneath it. Real panic. The kind that comes when money finally stops cushioning denial. Please, she said again, I'm your mother. My mother's voice did not rise. You were, when it was easy. Then she ended the call. After that, she never mentioned it unless necessary. Which, in my experience, is how you know someone has moved from emotion into strategy. The louder people are, the less they usually have. My mother got quieter. The bank proceedings went on for months. Nora monitored them. My mother asked oddly specific questions. Timing, auction conditions, notice periods, repair liabilities. She never discussed her reasons with me directly, not then. But I saw something taking shape behind her face, and it did not look like resentment. It looked like intention. Meanwhile, Sabrina and Ethan vanished into the kind of irresponsibility that only works when someone older is still trying to make consequences disappear for you. They did not save the house, did not step in, did not suddenly become worthy of all the loyalty that had been spent on them. They just kept moving from excuse to excuse, draining what was left and calling it bad luck. By the time the foreclosure became unavoidable, I understood something about my family, that no child should learn this early. Love in that house had never been measured by goodness, only preference. Vivian preferred Sabrina, preferred the daughter who needed more, demanded more, consumed more, preferred the one who made every room unstable and then cried when it collapsed. And my mother, the daughter who kept surviving, had been punished for the very steadiness that should have made her cherished. But steadiness has its own long revenge. It builds. It waits. It learns numbers and law and timing. And while my grandmother was still calling my mother in the language of guilt, my mother had already stopped listening like a daughter. She was listening like someone studying a structure she intended to reclaim. The foreclosure notice came in the middle of winter. Not with drama, not with shouting. Just a letter, folded too neatly, printed in language that sounded polite if you didn't understand that it meant the end of something that had once defined an entire family. By then, the house wasn't really Vivian's anymore. Not in the way ownership is supposed to feel. It was a structure tied up in numbers, interest rates, and deadlines. A place still standing, but already claimed by people who had never set foot inside it. The marble island was still there, the carved mantel still intact, Harold's bookshelves still lining the walls, but legally, emotionally, practically, it was slipping away. My mother didn't go to see it during that time. That always stayed with me. She didn't drive past, didn't stand at the edge of the street to look at it from a distance, didn't indulge in the kind of nostalgia that makes people weaker when they should be thinking clearly. Instead, she sat in her office with Nora and asked questions. What's the timeline? When is the auction listed? What condition disclosures are required? Any structural flags? Estimated market value if restored? She treated the house the same way she treated every project she took on, something that needed to be understood before it could be saved. I didn't realize what she was doing until much later. At the time, I thought she was just interested. Now I know she was preparing. Vivian called again 2 weeks before the auction. This time, her voice sounded smaller. Not angry, not defensive, just diminished. Delilah, she said, they're going to take it. My mother stood in the kitchen, one hand resting on the counter, looking out the window like she was watching something very far away. I know, she said. I don't have anywhere else to go, Vivian whispered. That wasn't entirely true. There were options. Smaller places, less impressive ones. But not that house. Not the symbol she had built her identity around. Not the place she had used as proof that she had done something right, even while everything inside it had gone wrong. You should have thought about that, my mother said. There was no cruelty in it, just fact. Vivian started crying again, but this time it didn't carry the same weight. It sounded like someone finally understanding that the version of the world they had relied on was gone. Please, she said, help me keep it. My mother closed her eyes for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was steady. No. Silence. Then a sharp intake of breath, like Vivian had just been struck. You would let me lose your father's house? She asked. My mother opened her eyes. You lost it, she said. I just refused to pay for it. And that was the end of that conversation. The auction was scheduled for early spring. I was 16 when my mother sat me down at the dining table in our apartment, still the same one with the folding table pushed against the wall, though by then the apartment itself felt temporary, like we were already halfway somewhere else. She looked at me for a long moment before speaking. "Sienna," she said, "I need you to understand something before it happens." "What's happening?" I asked. She folded her hands together. "Your grandfather built that house," she said. "Not your grandmother. Him. Every beam, every detail, every piece of it was meant to last longer than the people living in it." I nodded slowly. "I know. She used it," my mother continued, "to protect the wrong things. And now it's going to be sold." I felt something tighten in my chest. "Are we going to see it?" I asked. My mother shook her head. "No. Why not?" "Because I'm not going to stand outside something that should have been ours and pretend that's enough." That answer didn't make full sense to me at 16, but I didn't question it. Then she said something that changed everything. "I'm going to buy it." I blinked. "What?" "The house," she said. "I'm going to buy it at auction." The room went very still. "With what money?" I asked, because even at 16 I understood the scale of what she was saying. She gave a small, almost tired smile. "The money I earned," she said. "The money I saved. The money I didn't spend fixing other people's mistakes." I stared at her. "Does Grandma know?" "No." "Does Sabrina?" "No." "Isn't that, I don't know, extreme?" My mother leaned back slightly in her chair. "This isn't about them," she said. "This is about making sure your grandfather's work doesn't disappear because someone valued the wrong people more than the right things." I didn't fully understand the layers of that sentence then, but I understood enough to feel the shift. This wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. The auction happened on a Tuesday morning. I wasn't there. My mother didn't want me there. She went with Nora. Later, she told me it was quieter than she expected. A handful of bidders, a few investors, one developer who kept checking his phone, people who saw the house as square footage, location, potential return. Not history, not memory, not a place where a man had once carved wood by hand and believed he was building something for generations. The bidding moved quickly. Numbers rose, paused, rose again, then stopped. My mother made the final bid. And just like that, the house was hers. Not because anyone gave it back. Because she took it the only way that mattered. Cleanly, legally, undeniably. She didn't call Vivian. Didn't call Sabrina. Didn't announce it. The first person she told was me. She came home that afternoon, set her keys on the counter, and said, "It's done." I looked at her, searching for something in her face. Joy. Relief. Triumph. But what I saw instead was something quieter. Certainty. "When do we move?" I asked. She exhaled slowly. "After we fix it," she said. And we did. That summer became a blur of dust, paint, and transformation. The house needed work, not because it was broken beyond repair, but because it had been neglected in all the ways that matter. Small things ignored, larger things postponed. The kind of slow decay that comes from people who assume something will always be there no matter how carelessly they treat it. My mother approached it differently. She didn't erase its history. She restored it. The marble island stayed. The bookshelves stayed. The stone columns on the porch were cleaned, not replaced. But the things that had once symbolized imbalance were corrected. Rooms were opened. Light was brought in. Spaces that had once felt like afterthoughts were made whole. One afternoon, I asked her why she cared so much about keeping certain details. She ran her hand along the edge of the mantel, fingers tracing the grooves Harold had carved decades earlier. "Because this house wasn't built to be temporary," she said. "It was built by someone who believed in permanence. I'm not going to treat it like it's disposable just because someone else did." We moved in at the end of that summer. I got a bedroom with a window that faced the front yard. Not the back. Not the leftover space. A real room. My mother stood in the doorway the first night, looking at it for a long moment before saying, almost to herself, "No one in this house is ever going to feel like an afterthought again." I didn't realize how much that line mattered until years later. Vivian found out 2 days after we moved in. Not from my mother. From a neighbor. She called immediately. I was in the kitchen when the phone rang. My mother answered, listened, then leaned against the counter, expression unreadable. "You bought it?" Vivian demanded. "I did," my mother said. "That's my house." My mother shook her head slightly, even though Vivian couldn't see it. "It was your house," she said. "You lost it. I bought it. Those are different things." "You did this to hurt me," Vivian snapped. "No," my mother said. "I did this to protect what you were willing to lose." Silence crackled through the line. "You're punishing me," Vivian said finally. My mother's voice stayed calm. "If I wanted to punish you, I would have helped you keep it and watched you lose it again." Vivian didn't respond to that, because there was no response that didn't require admitting something she had spent years avoiding. That the problem had never been the house. It had been who she chose to give everything to. Sabrina called next, angry, accusing. "How could you do this?" she demanded. "She's our mother." My mother stood in the kitchen, sunlight cutting across the marble island, her hand resting lightly on the surface Harold had installed decades before. "She was my mother too," she said. "Remember?" Sabrina faltered for a second, then recovered. "She's old, Delilah." "And you're irresponsible," my mother said. "We're all just stating facts today." "You're cold," Sabrina snapped. My mother smiled faintly. "No," she said, "I learned." Then she hung up. We lived in that house for 3 years before anything else shifted. 3 years of quiet, of stability, of dinners at the same marble island where my mother had once been dismissed as the daughter who didn't need anything. 3 years where nothing dramatic happened, and that, more than anything, was the real victory. Because peace, when you fought for it, feels louder than chaos ever did. Then, when I was 19, the phone rang again. And this time, everything that had been building quietly for 2 decades finally started to collapse on the people who thought consequences would never reach them. It was a Tuesday evening. Nothing special about it. My mother was making pasta, the same way she always did on Tuesdays. Slow, deliberate, tasting the sauce like it mattered, like consistency was something she had built on purpose and refused to let go of. I was at the Marble Island, Harold's Island, scrolling through my phone, half paying attention to the rhythm of the house. Then her phone rang. She glanced at the screen. Didn't react at first. Then something in her posture shifted. Not visibly, not dramatically, but enough that I looked up. She answered. "Delilah." She listened. Her expression didn't change, but her shoulders went still in that way they always did when something serious had just entered the room. "I'm not listed as her financial contact," she said after a moment. Pause. Then, "He signed the papers. You need to call him." Another pause. Longer this time. "I understand," she said quietly. "Have your billing department send the documentation to my attorney." She hung up. For a few seconds, she just stood there, hands still resting lightly on the counter, eyes unfocused like she was seeing something from far away. I set my phone down. "What happened?" I asked. She didn't answer immediately. Then she said, "Your grandmother is in a nursing home." The words landed strangely. Not shocking. Not entirely unexpected. Just inevitable. "What about Sabrina?" I asked. My mother let out a small breath. "She put her there," she said, "signed the intake paperwork, promised to cover the cost." "And?" My mother looked at me. "She stopped paying." That was it. No anger in her voice. No surprise. Just confirmation. Of course she did. The pattern had never changed. Sabrina had always started things, never finished them. "What happens now?" I asked. "The facility has been trying to reach her," my mother said. "She's not responding. Numbers disconnected, address outdated." "And so they called you?" "Yes." I leaned back slightly, processing it. "How much?" My mother named the number. "Monthly. Not total. Monthly." I felt my stomach drop. "That's insane." "It's what care costs when you need it consistently," she said. "And Grandma can't pay?" "She has income," my mother said, "but it covers about half." "And the rest?" My mother met my eyes. "They expect the responsible party to cover it." "And that's Sabrina." "Yes." "But she's gone." "Yes." The silence that followed felt heavier than anything that had come before, because this wasn't the past anymore. This wasn't betrayal or memory or something you could file away as what happened. This was now. This was happening in real time. "What are you going to do?" I asked. My mother turned back to the stove, stirring the sauce slowly, like the answer was something she needed to find in the movement. "Nothing," she said. I frowned. "Nothing?" "She's not my financial responsibility," my mother said. "Sabrina signed the documents. Sabrina made the promise. Sabrina can keep it." "And if she doesn't?" My mother didn't answer right away. I could see the calculation happening behind her face. Then she said, "Then your grandmother will be transferred to a state facility." I'd never seen one, but I'd heard enough. That answer sat between us like something sharp. "And you're okay with that?" I asked. That question wasn't fair, but it was honest. My mother stopped stirring. For a moment, she didn't move at all. Then she said very quietly, "No." She turned the stove off, set the spoon down, and leaned both hands against the counter. "I'm not okay with it," she said, "but that doesn't mean I'm responsible for fixing it." I watched her. The woman who had been told she was strong enough not to need anyone. The woman who had been excluded, dismissed, replaced. The woman who had built everything in this house without help from any of them. And now she was the only person left who could decide whether the woman who had abandoned her would be safe or not. "Does she know they called you?" I asked. My mother shook her head. "Not yet, 3 days later, she did. Vivian called in the afternoon. I was home. So was my mother. She answered. Delilah, Vivian said, and I could hear it immediately. The difference. This wasn't the voice from years ago. Not controlled, not composed, not certain. This was fear, real fear. They told me, Vivian said, voice shaking. They said if the balance isn't paid, they're going to move me. My mother didn't interrupt. They said Sabrina isn't answering, Vivian continued. I can't reach her. I don't know where she is. Silence. Then, softer. Please. That word filled the entire room. I'm asking you, Vivian said. Help me. My mother closed her eyes, just for a second, then opened them again. Where is Sabrina? She asked. I don't know, Vivian said. She changed her number. Someone told me she might have moved out of state. I don't know anything anymore. That landed harder than anything else. Because for the first time, Vivian sounded like someone who had lost control of the story she had been telling herself for decades. The facility said you're behind, my mother said. I know, Vivian whispered. I know. I thought she was paying. She said she was handling it. My mother let out a slow breath. That sounds familiar. Vivian started crying then. Not the composed crying of someone trying to win an argument. The kind that breaks through your voice whether you want it to or not. I made mistakes, she said. I know I did. I know I chose wrong. But I'm 80 years old, Delilah. I'm alone. I'm scared. My mother didn't move, didn't soften, didn't interrupt. She just listened. Then she said something I will never forget. I'm going to ask you one question, she said, and I need you to answer it honestly. Vivian's crying quieted slightly. Anything. My mother's voice was steady. If Sabrina was still here, if she was still paying, if she was still showing up, would you be calling me right now? Silence. Not short, not uncertain, heavy, full. The kind of silence that holds truth whether someone speaks it or not. Delilah, Vivian started. Answer the question, my mother said. Another long pause. Then, finally, I don't know. It was almost a whisper, but it was real, and somehow that made it worse. My mother nodded once. That's the most honest thing you've said to me in 20 years, she said. Vivian started crying again. I'm sorry, she said, for everything, for choosing her, for losing you, for not being there, for... My mother didn't stop her. But she didn't respond to the apology either. Because some apologies come too late to change anything except how clearly you see the past. I'm not going to let you be transferred, my mother said finally. The crying on the other end of the line broke into relief so fast it almost sounded like laughter. Thank you, Vivian said. Thank you. But listen carefully, my mother added. And the relief stopped. I'm not doing this because you deserve it, she said. I'm doing it because of who I am. Vivian went quiet. I'm going to set up a payment plan through my attorney, my mother continued. It won't come directly from me. It will be structured, controlled, and it does not change what happened between us. Yes, Vivian said quickly. Yes, of course. And Sabrina doesn't get to disappear and pretend this never happened, my mother added. If she surfaces, the responsibility goes back to her. Yes. My mother paused, then said very quietly, This is the last time I'm the backup. Vivian didn't respond to that, because there was nothing left to say. After the call ended, my mother stood there for a long time, not moving, not speaking, just standing. Then she picked up her phone and called Nora. Set up the trust, she said. Cover the difference. Structured payments only. Pause. Yes, I know how much it is. Another pause. Yes, she said again. I'm sure. She ended the call, went back to the stove, turned the heat on, and continued making dinner. Like nothing had changed, like everything had. Vivian has been in that nursing home for over a year now. My mother pays every month. Not directly. Never directly. Through structure. Through distance. Through a system that makes it clear this is responsibility, not reconciliation. Sabrina hasn't called. Hasn't visited. Hasn't paid. The favorite daughter chose herself. Exactly the way she was raised to. Last month, I went to see Vivian. My mother didn't ask me to. Didn't stop me either. That's your choice, she said. So I went. The place smelled like antiseptic and something older underneath it. The kind of smell that settles into fabric and doesn't leave. Vivian was sitting by the window when I walked in. She looked smaller than I expected. Thinner. Softer. For a second, she didn't recognize me. Then her face changed. Sienna, she said. I nodded. Hi, Grandma. She started crying immediately. You're so grown, she said. You look just like your mother. I know. She reached for my hand. I let her take it. I'm sorry, she said, for everything. I studied her for a moment. Then I said, I know you are now. She flinched slightly at the word now. And then, because I needed to understand something the same way my mother had, I asked her, if Sabrina was still here, if she was still paying, would you have wanted to see me? Vivian looked down at her hands. Thin, shaking slightly, spotted with age. I want to say yes, she whispered. I waited. But I don't know, she finished. And there it was. Again. The truth she couldn't escape. Even now. Even here. I nodded slowly. That's the most honest thing you've said, I told her. She started crying again. I stood up. Before I left, I said one last thing. My mother pays every month, I said. She didn't have to, but she does. Vivian covered her mouth. I walked out. Drove home. Pulled into the driveway. Stone columns. Front porch. The house. Our house. My mother was in the kitchen, stirring sauce. Like always. How was it? She asked. I set my keys down. She's sorry, I said. And she still doesn't know if she would have chosen differently. My mother nodded. I know. I looked at her for a moment, then said, You're better than she deserved. She shook her head slightly. No, she said. Harold was. I just paid attention. She went back to cooking. I sat at the marble island, ran my hand over the surface, and understood something I hadn't fully grasped until that moment. Family isn't who chooses you when it's easy. It's who shows up when it costs them something. My grandmother chose wrong. My aunt disappeared. My father walked away. And my mother, the one they all thought would be fine without them, built a life strong enough to carry even the people who didn't deserve to be part of it. Not because she forgave them, but because she refused to become them.